Laser, eastbound I-30 East or Althor, and just before 2nd Avenue. That's where you had a problem. It's now gone out of the right lane, but very heavy still throughout the downtown canyon. Still slow southbound I-45 back to Woodall-Rogers, and eastbound Woodall-Rogers is heavy back to the west end.
An ozone alert has been called into effect tomorrow for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The weather conditions are ripe for the accumulation.
Transportation is the most vital component of economic development, air quality, safety, and overall quality of life of the region. It is also the issue that best demonstrates the interdependence and common interest of the various political entities of the region. A good transportation system will benefit us all.
The Dallas-Fort Worth area has one of the nation's most vibrant and rapidly growing regional economies. With over 3.5 million people producing nearly 30% of the state's gross product, the Metroplex is a key economic region to both the state and the U.S. Nearly 90,000 jobs come online each year. By the year 2010, our area's population is expected to increase by 32%, with employment increasing by 50%. In order to maintain this growth, however, we must be able to continue to provide a sound and efficient transportation system. With travel exceeding 90 million vehicle miles each day, we are placing an increased burden on our regional transportation system. Growing levels of congestion and deteriorating air quality are two results of our rapid growth. Many needed transportation improvements in our region, such as new freeways, high occupancy vehicle lanes, and rail lines, will be funded in part through the expenditure of state and federal funds. We are now spending over $500 million every year on transportation improvements. These funds are available as a result of user fee revenues such as gas taxes and vehicle registration fees. Funding for transportation improvements is facilitated through the Transportation Improvement Program process. The Transportation Improvement Program is the mechanism for allocating state and federal funds to specific transportation improvements. The Transportation Improvement Program is often referred to as the TIP and represents the collaborative efforts of the North Central Texas Council of Governments, the Texas Department of Transportation, the Texas Turnpike Authority, transportation authorities, local governments in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The TIP is financially constrained to estimates of available funding and contains an inventory of transportation projects to be constructed by local governments. The Transportation Improvement Program is one of several federally required transportation activities that are the responsibility of the North Central Texas Council of Governments as the designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The MPO assumes many other responsibilities in carrying out regional transportation planning. Each year, under the direction of the RTC, Ntcog staff develops and implements a unified planning work program for regional transportation planning. Aimed at reducing congestion, a congestion management system is also in place. In addition, the MPO develops and maintains a regional transportation plan, which serves as a comprehensive vision of the region's future transportation system. The TIP is the companion to the Regional Transportation Plan by staging and funding the construction of projects included in the plan. Ntcog and the Regional Transportation Council have fulfilled this role as the MPO since 1974. In 1991, this role significantly expanded with the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, or ICE-T. With the passage of ICE-T, the MPO now selects specific projects for funding in various federal programs.
The Regional Transportation Councils is all the communities in the area's way of bringing their transportation issues to the table. Both the large and small cities have the opportunity to bring their projects and their needed transportation requirements to a forum that is discussed and debated by all the elected officials in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
The Regional Transportation Council is comprised of 30 local elected officials appointed by member governments and 5 non-elected representatives of the Texas Department of Transportation Dallas and Fort Worth districts, the Texas Turnpike Authority, Dallas Area Rapid Transit, and the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. The Transportation Department of the North Central Texas Council of Governments provides technical support and staff assistance to the Regional Transportation Council and its technical committees.
The TIP process is a very important process to our area. It involves public meetings and public input, but it also means that we work very closely with state leadership to talk about those projects that should be planned in advance so that locally we can begin organizing our resources. The TIP process involves the community at a local level, it involves the community at a state level, and by us coming together through our Council of Governments, we are more able to talk about the projects long-term that will impact our communities.
Preparation of the TIP begins each spring as local governments, TxDOT, the Texas Turnpike Authority, and the transportation authorities meet with COG staff and various technical committees to discuss the status of specific projects. In order for a project to be eligible for funding in the TIP, it must first be included in the Regional Transportation Plan. For regionally significant roadway and transit projects, a major investment study must be completed to refine the recommendations of the Regional Transportation Plan. Other project development phases, including engineering, environmental clearance, and right-of-way acquisition, take place as the project approaches construction.
Projects get funded in a three-step process. The first step is we go out and do needs identification. There are a lot of transportation needs in the region. We have to find those projects that are most cost-effective. Second thing is we have to find the appropriate source of funds. There are lots of different programs of funds. We have to put the appropriate source of funds into the appropriate project. Sometimes members of the Regional Transportation Council select those projects. Sometimes the transportation authorities or TxDOT select those projects. And finally, we then have to schedule the project on when it best should be implemented. And that is done through the Transportation Improvement Program.
While ICE-T greatly advanced the concept of flexible funding programs, many state and federal programs continue to have different requirements with unique eligibility constraints. This makes TIP development and the funding process complex. State and federal programs comprise the TIP's largest source of funds. These funds are administered primarily by TxDOT for the construction and improvement of roadways in the Metroplex. The Regional Transportation Council has project selection authority for 5 funding categories: Surface Transportation Program Metropolitan Mobility, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement, Urbanized Area Formula Program, formerly Transit Section 9, Elderly and Persons with Disabilities Program, formerly Transit Section 16, Urban Street Program. In addition, the RTC prioritizes projects in the Transportation Enhancement category.
Under the specific guidelines of the Intermodal Surface Transportation Act, the federal highway funds are administered by the state in cooperation with the Regional Transportation Council.
The first of these funding categories fund improvements to the National Highway System. The National Highway System includes all interstates and freeways and the majority of principal arterials in the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. The Federal Highway Administration disperses federal roadway funds to the state. The allocation of these funds to metropolitan areas and TxDOT districts across Texas is overseen by the Texas Transportation Commission in Austin. Funds in the National Highway System program are directed toward 5 different components. The mobility component addresses needs on Texas roads that are on the National Highway System. The rehabilitation component addresses repairs. There is also a component to address traffic management, such as synchronization of traffic signals and changeable message signs in order to reduce congestion. In 1993, the Texas Transportation Commission identified a system of roadways known as the Texas Trunk System that serve the rural areas of the state. There is a category of National Highway System funds that may be used for NHS projects on roadways on the Texas Trunk System. The final category of National Highway System funds addresses relatively small needs associated with other NHS projects, such as the construction of noise walls. Projects receiving National Highway System funds are selected by the state based on a project evaluation and ranking system. Selected projects are approved by the Texas Transportation Commission. However, the RTC must concur with the Commission's selection of projects located in the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. Another federal funding program established by the ICE-T is the Surface Transportation Program, or STP. STP funds are divided among 5 categories. The first category is dedicated to the construction of safety projects, including railroad signal programs. According to ICE-T, 10% of all surface transportation funds must be allocated to safety. The state selects safety projects for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but the RTC must also agree. Another 10% of STP funds must be set aside to fund transportation enhancements. ICE-T identifies 10 types of enhancements, including scenic beautification, bicycle facilities, and historic preservation. In Texas, enhancement projects are selected on a statewide competitive basis. The Texas Transportation Commission selects projects based on the recommendations of an interagency state committee. Prior to submitting proposed enhancement projects to Austin, the RTC reviews them and makes priorities. Examples of projects in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that have been funded by the enhancement program include the McKinney Avenue Trolley, bicycle trails, and historic preservation projects. The remaining 80% of Surface Transportation Program funds are divided among 3 principal categories. These are metropolitan mobility, urban mobility, and rural mobility. The metropolitan mobility category funds transportation needs in areas with a population greater than 200,000. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this covers the urbanized area defined by the U.S. Census. Urban mobility funds may be used for improvements in those areas outside the urbanized area with a population greater than 5,000. Finally, rural mobility funds are targeted to those areas with a population less than 5,000. These funds may be used to widen roadways and to construct new arterials at or above the collector level. The selection of projects to receive STP funds is varied. The state, in coordination with the Regional Transportation Council, selects the projects receiving funds from the urban mobility or rural mobility programs. A large portion of Surface Transportation Program funds are allocated to the metropolitan mobility category. The RTC is responsible for selecting metropolitan mobility projects.
You know, one of the toughest challenges we face at the Regional Transportation Council is to develop a process that's not only fair to the member governments, but addresses the mobility needs of the entire region. We do that by adopting a series of objective criteria and then applying those criteria to each of the projects submitted by member governments. After evaluation, the projects are ranked based upon the application of those criteria.
In evaluating proposed projects for metropolitan mobility funding, the RTC looks at each in terms of its current and future cost effectiveness, how it will improve air quality and conserve energy, the degree to which local governments will help pay for implementing the project, and how it will improve mobility in the area. Each project is assigned a point value based on these criteria, and the projects receiving the highest point values are selected.
Clean air is a major quality of life issue and a major economic development issue in the Metroplex. Accordingly, at the RTC, we spend a significant amount of time addressing clean air related issues.
Dallas-Fort Worth is classified as a non-attainment area for the pollutant ozone. Therefore, the development of transportation control measures aimed at improving air quality is a critical element of the TIP process. ICE-T, together with the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, specify stringent air quality conformity requirements to ensure that transportation improvements improve air quality. In light of our air quality status, a particularly important funding program for the Dallas-Fort Worth region is the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, or CMAQ. This program directs funds toward transportation projects that will improve air quality. Because the Dallas-Fort Worth area does not meet the federal standard for the pollutant ozone, it receives congestion mitigation and air quality funds. The counties in this area in which CMAQ-funded projects may be constructed are Collin, Denton, Dallas, and Tarrant. Various types of projects can be funded under this program as long as they are aimed at reducing emissions. Examples include transit system improvements, intersection arterial and signal improvements, and high-occupancy vehicle lanes. Projects receiving congestion mitigation and air quality funds are selected by the RTC using similar criteria as for other funding categories. However, greater emphasis is placed on immediate project cost effectiveness and air quality benefits.
There is a wide variety of funding available for transportation projects. Federal, state, and local funding is facilitated through the TIP. In addition, we're looking at other funding sources such as toll roads.
The TIP includes programs to finance other types of transportation improvements. The majority of these are funded completely by the state, including bridge replacement or rehabilitation, preventative maintenance on the state highway system, and construction or rehabilitation of roads within or adjacent to state parks. The Texas Transportation Commission also provides funds for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of urban streets that direct traffic to and from the state highway system. This program is known as the Urban Street Program. The Regional Transportation Council selects these projects. There are also several categories of discretionary programs to finance transportation improvements. State district discretionary funds are allocated to the TxDOT district offices to fund improvement projects on the state highway system. Specific projects to be funded under this category are selected by the district offices. Commission Strategic Priority and State-Funded Mobility are two state funding programs allocated to projects at the discretion of the Texas Transportation Commission. Projects which promote economic development, system continuity, and strategic or emergency needs are generally funded by these programs.
The thing about public transportation that's very important is first a recognition that in a region that is growing as fast as this particular region, we're going to have a much more balanced transportation investment, which includes public transportation.
In most instances, federal funding programs for transit improvements are administered through the Federal Transit Administration, directly to local transit operators or designated local government transit funding recipients. There are several categories of funds for transit improvements addressed in the TIP. Capital Program Funds, formerly known as Section 3 Transit Discretionary Funds, are allocated for the purpose of major capital investments in projects such as rail systems and HOV lanes. Capital Program Funds are awarded annually through a national competitive grant application process, but also must receive endorsement by the Regional Transportation Council. The RTC is responsible for selecting transit projects receiving Urbanized Area Formula Program, formerly Section 9, funding. These funds provide both capital and operating assistance to the transit operators in urban areas. As with other programs which the RTC administers, projects are selected based on an objective set of criteria. Elderly and Persons with Disabilities Funds, formerly known as the Section 16 program, are targeted toward private nonprofit providers of transportation for elderly and disabled individuals. Capital assistance is provided with these funds. The Federal Transit Administration and the Texas Department of Transportation, in conjunction with the RTC, are responsible for selecting area projects. TxDOT administers funds for the Federal Transit Administration's non-urbanized area formula program funds, formerly known as the Section 18 program. These funds are earmarked for public transportation projects to be implemented in areas with a population under 50,000.
There are serious financial constraints relative to transportation growth. And there are not enough funds available from any source to provide for those additional needs. Therefore, we'll have to look to other sources.
While metropolitan planning organizations have been developing transportation improvement programs for many years, ICE-T changed the process by requiring that the TIP be financially constrained to available resources. The TIP contains projects to be implemented over the next 9 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Those programs of funds administered by the MPO are financially constrained over the full 9-year period. The other funding programs, for which TxDOT is in charge of project selection, are financially constrained for 3 years only. The requirement of financial constraint adds challenges to the programming process because there is usually not sufficient funding to implement all project needs.
A great effort is placed on involving the public in transportation decision-making. The Regional Transportation Council, in response to ICE-T, requires citizen involvement in making and implementing transportation decisions.
In order to ensure that the public has the opportunity to comment and provide input on the draft TIP, COG typically holds a series of public meetings throughout the region prior to the TIP's adoption. COG's technical committees are also involved in the TIP's development. COG staff regularly briefs these committees on issues relating to TIP development. These technical committees are responsible for reviewing and recommending approval of the TIP. The final TIP is adopted by the Regional Transportation Council and COG's Executive Board by October of each year. Once the TIP is adopted, it is transmitted to TxDOT headquarters in Austin. TxDOT compiles the TIPs received from the 25 MPOs around the state. This information, along with the project information for the state's rural areas, which is developed by TxDOT's district offices, is incorporated into a document encompassing the entire state, called the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. Like the TIP, the STIP is financially constrained to available resources. After applicable public review and comment periods, the final STIP is presented to the Texas Transportation Commission for final approval.
The Transportation Improvement Program, along with the Transportation Plan, are the two most critical obligations you have as local policy leaders on the Regional Transportation Council. No project can proceed in the Transportation Improvement Program that hasn't been identified either specifically as a project or identified in a program or policy of the Regional Transportation Council in the Mobility 2010 plan. So the Transportation Improvement Program is the funding mechanism to the Mobility 2010 plan. Your local government capital improvements program is the funding mechanism to your city's comprehensive plan. Your 5-year business plan is the funding mechanism to your company's strategic plan. And it's no different than what we have in transportation. We now have to do a much better job up front identifying what those priorities are and constraining it to the real dollars that are available.
Your big delays are eastbound I-30 East or Alpha and just before 2nd Avenue. That's where you had a problem. It's now gone out of the right lane, but very heavy still throughout the downtown canyon. Still slow southbound I-45 back to Woodall-Rogers, and eastbound Woodall-Rogers is heavy back to the west end.
An ozone alert has been called into effect tomorrow for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The weather conditions are right for the accumulation.